Okay, we are live. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am here live to do I guess debate slash discussion with Ava. How do you say it? Raiza?
Raiza.
Raiza. Yeah. So yeah, I mean if you want to just go ahead and introduce yourself to the Misfit Nation audience.
I'm Ava Raiza. I kind of ended up on streams by going on Stuttering John's show. I'm probably a populist leftist, if you wanted to frame it that way. I'm sure you're already annoyed because I'm trans and that hurts your feelings. And I met Crishaun on the Jake Hudson chat, and I like Crishaun, but we argue a lot. And last time he did his show that I watched, I mercilessly attacked the co-host and shat on it, and then apologized to him after because I felt like I pushed it too far. And we've always wanted to riff about politics, so here we are. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
yeah. Um all right, well let's just jump right into the stuff we were talking about there. And we were just on Jake Hudson's stream, so shout out to Jake Hudson bringing
Legend.
bringing worlds together that
That's
would have
right.
probably never otherwise have done it. I mean, you mentioned the transgender thing.
Mhm.
But I actually find that you have a relatively reasonable like take on the transgender thing. That's why I think I just to put that out there on why we're not debating that, because I don't think we have much to debate, to be honest.
Sure.
Would you be able to give like your take on that real quick?
Yeah, I'll do my best. If I go too long, just tell me to shut up.
Go ahead, go ahead. You know
Yeah,
the
I am a transgender woman. I'm 35. I came out like 4 years ago. I have like my first generation Muslim parents. Um, Before that, I never actually had any transgender friends or really any LGBTQ friends. So when I transitioned during COVID, I was living alone, and so I kind of have just the vantage point of that and none of the programmed things about that. One of the things that was very hard for me about coming out was all of the people online that represent trans people are very extreme and irrational, for the most part, um, and they never and because everyone is so defensive, they never respect boundaries that people that don't know trans people have that are conservative or even not conservative about things about children, when hormone blockers should be given, if at all. And I respect those views for those decisions about people that are under 18. I understand the arguments about trans sports, and I feel like a problem that people on the left have is that they don't um, give any charitable interpretation of anyone that has any questions about that. And I think that that's a toxic thing. I do think that there's on the other side of it, I think kind of what your show does is like there's a wing of the people on the right that just this is like a own game, and it's like dehumanizes trans people, and I think that both sides are toxic. And for me, one of the things I hoped I could ever do by going on these streams, and the streams I go on are all basically people that don't like trans people, that are in the Dabbleverse, was just to exist because there's not examples of this really, was just to be a trans person that exists and doesn't behave that way because that's not how I am. And last argument I would make is that I feel like because people that are very online, they tend to be the most annoying and extreme representations of people. And I would make the argument that those that you would probably find that there's so many trans people that aren't on streams or online because they're just living their lives. And I would like to just I guess ideally constantly try to remind people of that, because people that are that irrational and needing people to gender them properly and getting mad if people have any like struggle with that or anything like that, the people that are rational about it probably aren't online acting like a bunch of jackasses like trans extremists.
I get you, but like my only thing to say is that I do think it's something that's like if you're not gonna admit to it that it is like a disorder, and we've had this conversation
Mm-hmm.
before, but that you're not going to admit to it that it is a disorder, and then you're going to try to indoctrinate people and indoctrinate me or force me to
Mm-hmm.
like enable people's disorder and pretend it's not one, that's where I think the whole thing, like, I agree there's like a lot of like unreasonability on both sides as far as like even the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So like my point is that I'm just not for the like the kind of like trying to tell us that it's like normalizing it more or less.
Oh, okay, I understand. Yeah, that reminds me. I forgot to say this earlier. I think that if people put time into this, they will find that trans people have always existed. The country that I'm from, has words for that. They Pakistan had the first like had a transgender legislation recognizing them before America did. It's always been there. If you look at people like Gerda Wegner, that movie, The Danish Girl, is about them. That was in the early 1920s. They've always been here, but right now it's become a hotspot subject. I think that where trans people go wrong is where there's a lot of people, just like in any group, that are mentally ill in different ways, and some of them are, there's a lot of comorbidity in that. In my view, I think that for people to tell someone that they're a biological woman when they're not is not right, and I understand why people are weirded out by that. In my view, I am fine admitting that I'm a biological male, and I would find being called a transgender woman in terms of that's what you would describe when you're looking at me. If you're talking about gender, if you cannot make a distinction between gender and biology, then that's, we'll never get anywhere with that. But I have no problem admitting that I'm a biological male, and I think that when activists that aren't even transgender get caught up in this thing where people are asked what is a woman and they fumble with that, that's not where I'm at with it. I know that I wasn't born a woman. I'm proud to just be a transgender woman. I don't think that there's an indoctrination thing. I think that it's just being pumped up because it's a salient political point that is classically used in the same way that gay people were used, Mexicans people, to divide us so that we don't talk about the actual corruption and income inequality in this country.
Yeah, I agree, but that wasn't even like a main talking point of like the right wing, for instance, and conservatives until the left wing really exacerbated the whole thing and made it
Yes, that is true.
sort of a mainstream thing. Yeah. So I think that's where, and then really the conservatives didn't get involved until it involved the children and it involved like the school system sort of
That is true.
indoctrinate. Yeah. So I think that's where it, like, I think the left isn't being fair to the reasonability of conservatives where they kind of, left transgenders alone and gays alone at a point, but then it's like kind of like because they pushed it so far, the left wing, right wingers felt like they had to get involved. They had to stop, their kids from being indoctrinated. So I'm just saying I think you're kind of um I don't want to use a strong word like belittling, but I think you're kind of like downplaying it a little bit in that the indoctrination doesn't exist. I think it definitely existed.
I understand what you
Still
mean.
does.
I understand what you mean now, and I we were interpreting that word differently because I completely agree with you. I think that the reason we're in this position is because of a bunch of annoying leftists that started just making this so much worse in a way that's detrimental to trans people. Everything you said is correct, and I understand why conservative people reacted the way that they do. I ideally would wish that this wasn't such a hyper partisan issue, but unfortunately, the Democratic Party co-opted this, and I never want them to represent me in anything, and I understand why people reacted the way they do.
Got you. All right, just so we're not bogged down on this issue
We're good.
because we can get deeper into it, but so I kind of wanted you to, because the last episode you watched and you were a little miffed by our show, so I wanted you to go over
Can I
those
add,
like
can I add one more?
criticisms and then
Can I add
we'll
one more thing about the
sure.
trans thing? Um, Here's what I know. Because I still don't really hang out with. I'm just kind of like a musician who works and goes to grad school separately, and my experience of being a transgender person is that for most of my life I never came out because I knew how embarrassing and horrible that would be for my family. Most of my life I was a degenerate musician who couldn't really hold a job and couldn't hold relationships together and never lived anything beyond like a $200 room for rent. After I came out, my experience was that after I started HRT and came out and relieved myself of having that secret, that from that point on in my life, I got a temp job and then got hired officially as a government employee. And then since then, I'm now a professional that has my own house that I rent. I'm about to graduate when I dropped out of college. Like before, I'm now a good student and I'm very happy. I wake up very early in the morning. I have a nice life, and that's my experience. And that's all I can. That's where I'm coming from about me. So I'm not making any generalizations about anyone else. That's just for what it's worth. That's my experience with it.
I'm curious though, why do you feel like not transitioning was holding you back?
I don't really necessarily know how to explain it. I like the thing about when people talk about hormone treatment, like when I was transitioning, and I understand this might be gross, you guys might not. I do not blame you for not understanding it. For me, it was a physiological thing because there's things that come with being an HRT physically that I wanted. But what I didn't realize was that like there was also there was this sense of peace from that, and that I used to be a person that thrived in all these negative things and arguing with people and wanting to hurt people, and for me my experience with HRT, it was kind of replaced by this just feeling of wanting to communicate love. It's like I'm just a hormonally different person, and perhaps that just kind of led to things like I used to never be able to show up anywhere on time or anything like that. Now I'm early everywhere. There was something about hormones that I didn't even pursue them for that made me just become an adult rapidly in ways I never thought was possible. I don't know if that's my experience. God knows if that would be the case with other people. That's just what happened with me for some reason.
Yeah, I think that's what it does is it lowers your testosterone. So that's why you probably are way more emotional. So like that's kind of my.
I feel like I'm less emotional, more grounded.
Really?
I mean, I think that some people the Dabbleverse get thrown off, but like I'm like a stern nerd and like an Artie Lang nerd, and so when I argue with people like you, it's like it's like in the vein of like if you're hearing two people on the Stern show argue, and so it's not emotional. I'm never like actually mad at you or anything. I think sometimes like we get drunk and argue, and that's just funny, but I'm not like mad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's because you're really a dude. That's not like an insult. I'm just saying like
I'm saying before I was on hormones, I would want to destroy you and it would be a whole different ballgame.
Really?
Absolutely.
Well, it's probably like a unresolved thing that before you transitioned there was something, because I feel like
what?
Because the hormone thing kind of like it's like a chemical thing that they're fucking with in your body. Sorry, I don't know the scientific terms or anything, but like it's not like that happened naturally.
No, I think I was
Right.
I was naturally like imbalanced hormonally before, and you like one of my like theories about it is that whether you're hormonally male or female, if you're not at certain levels, I've just learned this because you have to go through these lab tests and all that just to be able to be on hormones, that can cause a lot of stress factors. So there's a chance that just being hormonally balanced affects you, whether or not you're born either of their gender, but if they're just in line with what normal levels are, that might make you more stable, regardless of if you're doing it, if it's chemically induced or not.
But
so
I'm just
hormone imbalance. I think that makes you, that has all these other behavioral traits that can come with that.
Can I just explain like what I think what I mean is like, for example, I used to be the same way. I was a slacker. I wouldn't say I had a hard time being on time for things, but things like that. Black. There you go. That's fair. Actually, I'm really good with time for being,
because you're half white.
But it's because my father's Jamaican. He's not actually black. But
that's even more vulgar.
Long story short, though, is like I fixed those things without changing my my hormones or doing like those things. Yeah, like
I'm not saying that I'm saying that that was this byproduct that I didn't think I was going to be a byproduct, but I understand normally what you would do is make improvements in your life.
yeah, discipline.
I didn't take the hormones to changing it. I'm just saying for some reason that's what happened with me. I'm only telling you about my experience. I just wanted to have
All
like
right.
I wanted bigger hips. That's why I was taking it, but I didn't. But yeah, but like if you look at like when I started hormones, it went from me like living in someone's garage to like me being like promoted 3 times and having a nice salary and getting back into college and being in honors college, and I'm about to graduate next semester. I don't know why it went that way. I'm just telling you that's what it was like for me.
That's fair. I mean, I just don't want to get into the whole like trans debate because it's not.
We don't have to debate it
Yeah,
because
that's
I
not good.
understand why for you there's just I could have made the exact same arguments against everything I'm saying, and I understand that, and I think all you can do is just I'm just who I am, and I also just think that we should never judge anyone who thinks like you, and then because either you there's trans erasure or just accept people like me have always existed, and I think all you can do is just be mindful that that doesn't mean that anyone like me should go around saying that
Well,
that's what should happen with children or anything like that. This is just what my experience was, and
my
that's it.
my ultimate problem too with it is like because you just used the term trans erasure,
Mhm.
right? Now, my thing isn't that I want, like, for instance, I don't want you, Ava, to not exist as a person.
You just want me to
How
be my biological
I'm just
self.
saying this. If we're both in agreement that it is a mental disorder or it is
Oh, I
some
didn't
kind
respond
of
to that
disorder.
part. I didn't respond to that part.
Well, let me
So
just finish this. Let me just finish this thought. If we both agree, or if I'm saying my belief is that it's a mental disorder, right? To me, to say that I want trans erasure doesn't mean that I want those people to die or I want anything extreme to happen to them. I just mean the mental disorder, just like I don't want schizophrenia to rapidly grow and become an epidemic. It's
absolutely.
like it's a disorder, it's a mental disorder.
Mhm.
So I don't want that to spread. Just like and I would like it to be erased, so to speak, but I know that's not a reality. So I'm just saying, like, I
You're
think
just telling people to keep it in the closet
what you're also, I think when you say trans,
and submit and obey to Christians' values.
I'm not necessarily because Christianity has free will.
No, I'm
So
sorry, Crishaun's values.
Christians.
Yeah.
Well, my point
Oh,
is
look,
that
I
I do want trans erasure. That doesn't mean though the extreme that I think you're putting onto that it means I want people to be, there a Holocaust be done of trans people.
I'll
It's like I
define.
want I
I'll
mean I want them to get help. I want them to, as a Christian, I want them to find God, but that's their thing.
I'll define what I meant by that. What
Yeah,
I
go
meant
ahead.
by that was just not having people be admit that they're trans, and that's fine.
Not
I
to
under,
say that again. I'm sorry.
what I meant by erasure wasn't that I didn't mean it in that harsh way. I meant just like for you, just like get help and not be trans and not spread this. That's what I meant by trans erasure. I didn't think you meant like Holocaust or anything like that.
Got you. But you don't agree with that though. You think it's okay for it to sort of spread and
I'm conflicted about like I think there's different parts of it because we like I know that if my in my life if I would have done this when I was younger, there's so many like things that would have been better in so many relationships that would have been not been torturous because it sucks to not admit that there's this thing that's going on. That said, so yeah, this is the kind of stuff I love that I am studying in school for clinical psych, and yeah, so like this is a mental disorder. But also if you look at the DSM, OCD is a mental disorder. There's so many different kinds of mental disorders, and I'm absolutely happy to admit to like say that yes, what I have is a disorder. In that, if you're just looking at it through a biological lens, in terms of even Darwinianism, it's what I'm doing is going against what nature actually has designed for us in order to reproduce. My counter argument to that goes against, I think, your uh, theology, your spirituality, which I respect. I respect you and your religion. I think that when you really deep dive what separates us from other animals is consciousness, and consciousness is what makes us have these behaviors that are counteract our ability to survive in this world and to procreate. Like there's something about our human consciousness that has these different personality disorders that are that work against our own biological interests. This we can't mean. I don't think me and you could ever reconcile this because your faith, like either you have faith or you don't in that religion. I'm personally agnostic, so I look at it like through a Freudian lens. And so, yes, it's a disorder, but there's a lot of disorders that you can have. Like I was on a couple of
Yeah,
streams.
can I jump on real quick? Because the thing is I agree with you. There are a lot of disorders, but like for instance, your example, OCD, right?
Mm-hmm.
People don't though go out now and say, I identify as an OCD person and I'm gonna create an OCD flag and I'm gonna push to have rights for people who have OCD, and that's now sort of almost like a racial group. That's where I think it's gone off the rails as far as the LGBTQ thing and having trans be a part of that.
Oh, we should
Is
just let's just make sure this is clear for any moving forward. I think that's different than what I was talking about because what you just said, I agree with you. Like there's no question. You're talking about the way people are behaving culturally in terms of trans issues and the way it's being used. I agree with you 100%.
okay. All right, let's leave it there then as far
Okay.
as that topic. So you were watching our show the last episode or the episode before, and you had some criticisms, and I'd just like to hear, because we kind of had the conversation off air, but I'd like to hear
Yeah, I
your
thought
kind
we
of
were
take
on
on
there
it.
for that.
No, we weren't. Sorry.
Well, I hope I don't bore you because I'll just say the same thing again.
Go ahead. Yeah.
My critique of your show was premised on the idea that I am I don't belong to a political tribe, and I feel like your show is very tribal about MAGA, Western chauvinism, and things like that. And because it is so far into that, I feel like it kind of it makes dialogue harder. And so the template of your show I was critical of is because it just shows the most annoying people in the most extreme light. And I think that on an evolutionary level, our brains weren't ready for us to have this much stimulation and this much feedback because of things like social media and the internet. And what we're watching is all of these, everyone is going crazy here, and it's hyper polarizing everyone. If you look at every country, they're having these like polarizing things. We're all just now hearing what everybody thinks about everything. And I think that for me, there's certain values that are why I care about politics that involve like the working class and just a decent opportunity for everyone. And I think that when we just start demonizing everyone, not just you, there's a arguably worse problem on the Democratic Party side of this. I think that it annoys me because I feel like we live in a duopoly where the corporate Republican Party and the Democratic Party are just this uniparty of absolute corruption that uses wedge issues like race and gender and all that to get us all fighting with each other to distract us from what's really happening, which is the income inequality and the economic conditions of people in this country. People are getting poorer and poorer, and that's on the MAGA end, and it's on people on the right. It's everywhere. And I think that the America First principles that people like Steve Bannon spoke about and that Donald Trump ran on both terms get lost when we start going down this road of that level of just demonization. And when I really think that leftist populism and America First people agree on some really important things, that if we could just not do those kind, like just feed this algorithm of hate, that we could solve like some big problems and actually destroy people like Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, who are to me the real villains, or Barack Obama or Joe Biden. I don't think that we can destroy that deep state unless the populist wings of the left and right, which I would argue is
Well,
America first, unless we can work together, and it's benefiting them that we're fighting this way. And that's not just your fault. As I said, the people on the left, and especially the ones talking about trans shit and all that, they're doing it too. So I have just as if I was watching a show that was the other side of it, I would give them shit too. And if you look at my Twitter, I do that all the time.
Gotcha. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. So basically, I think there's I think it's hard to kind of remove ideological moral values from things, from like conversations like this, because a lot of people try to do that and they're like, oh, let's keep things secular. But I think it's hard to do that and have this conversation, because we do have to sort of outline what morals are. You get what I mean?
Absolutely.
And what is moral, and where do we get our morals from?
Absolutely.
Right? So, like, for example, you're saying like, that we demonize the left wing, which I won't disagree with you. There is like some
you parody the most extreme stereotypes and misrepresent groups of people.
Okay, fair enough. Now my thing is this though, is to me, I'm more demonizing ideologies, and I think that's okay to do, right? Now you have to though be able to make the argument on why you find this thing to be immoral. You can't just say because I don't like it. You know what I mean? So for example, we live in a Christian nation, more or less. We live our laws are based on Christian values, right? The 10 commandments, you can't steal, you can't kill, that whole thing. So you have to kind of admit that even if you're not a Christian, even if you're agnostic or an atheist, you do live and you're safe in an American country because of Christian values, right? So my point is though, is that yeah, I demonize ideologies because I think some ideologies are in its nature demonic. So for the most part, like, I think left-wing ideologies are purposely going against Christianity and going against Judaism and all that, because a lot of them are Satanists. You get what I'm saying? So that's why, yeah, I do demonize certain things, like, people who are super pro-abortion up to, even like whatever amount of months. I don't care, because I think abortion is immoral. So that's kind of my point, is, yeah, I think there's demonization going on both sides. However, one side can make the moral argument and one side can't. The right wing and the conservatives can, and the left wing Satanists cannot. So that's why it's okay for us to demonize, and it's kind of not for you, because you can't make an argument.
Well, we'll never be able to reconcile that, and I would disagree.
Why not?
Because
where do you get
you're arguing that we're an ethno state, and I disagree.
I'm not saying that.
That's what you're saying.
No, I'm saying we're a nation founded on Christian values.
Right, but are we a Christian nation?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
because Christianity
that's an ethno state. That's what I'm saying.
Christianity is able to, it's one of the few religions that actually is based on like free will. So you do have the free will to be anti-Christian in a Christian nation. You can't do that with, like, for instance, Islam.
But you can't have that. But you're kind of saying two things at the same time.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Where do you get your morality from? Why do you think murder is wrong?
Oh, let me respond to the political point, and then we'll talk about that, if that's cool.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
I am a person that is arguing for politics to be about economic conditions, which I'm sure we probably disagree about that. I don't want the two there. We have a two-party system here, unfortunately, and I feel like those moral questions aren't the only things that matter in this world. They do matter, but unfortunately, they're grouped with economic policies. There's people that have your faith that agree with me about economics, and then vice versa. And unfortunately, those are attached to these two options that we have, and I'm a person that is trying to fight to change that.
But see, this is though why I think it's hard for us to continue the conversation without having the
Agreed.
moral argument.
We no.
Because
I under, I under,
how else do we differentiate why your economic policies or ideas are better than mine or more moral than mine? Because your whole argument is based on morality. I'm just trying to make sure
my
people
whole
are safe
argument
and
is
people
based
can.
on minimizing the most amount of human suffering possible. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, but what is human suffering? Like what?
Poverty, hunger.
Okay, what else? Like why? But why? Why are those bad things? Why are those immoral?
Because Jesus said so.
Okay, if I have just enough food to feed my family and there's a person who needs food and I go, no, I need to feed my family, am I being immoral?
No, but
Why not?
but we have a
You're causing human suffering, you're causing hunger.
no, because I would argue that systematic economic policy caused that. Somebody making that decision on a personal level like that is different. But you look at taxation as theft. So am I correct about that?
To a degree, to a degree.
I feel like you can, but this is we can't get too far here because
But
I could make one thing I could use what Jesus Christ said and make the exact same populist economic arguments that I'm making, and you can look at what Jesus says and not. I don't see how you
no,
do
you
that.
can't. You really can't. Like you can't without context. Like you have to provide context to say why your policies are Jesus like or why Jesus would have supported your policies. You get what I'm
Because
saying?
I feel like
You can't just go, oh, like for instance, you can't be a communist and go, oh well, I'm for the people and I'm for, but yet communism has proven that it doesn't lead to human prosperity. You get what I'm saying?
what's the difference between communism and socialism?
Communism is basically a complete takeover of the means of production by the government. Socialism is more or less you get to keep your company, but we're going to kind of force your hand to do our bidding, more or less, whether it be our political views or, like DEI, for instance.
No, socialism doesn't. No, there's so much wrong with that, but I don't want to argue
Well,
with you.
explain.
DEI is not socialism. DEI is a political philosophy about
So is
about
socialism.
equality that has nothing to do with economics. It's about trying to solve racial inequality because
Based on what though?
the people.
Economics.
I'm not a DEI person, but their argument is that because a lot of wealth is spanned from generations, that because of slavery, they there's an imbalance there, and their argument is that that's why you see so many black people in poverty. I'm not making the argument, but that's their argument. That is a different thing than socialism. Socialism and that are almost in contrast to each other.
Well, I mean, my personal view is that communism and socialism are more or less the same thing. It's like
That's why I asked you that, because I saw your show and you were just so irresponsibly calling people communists that aren't communists.
Well, like who? Mamdani? He's
Yeah.
legitimately a communist.
Do you think that Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a communist?
I don't. I guess I'm not educated enough on him to know, but I think he had like, I wouldn't call him social communist policies. Because I get what you mean. Like, there's a lot of right wingers who will look at like social programs in general as communism, and like I get that there's some social programs that are necessary, but when it comes down to like redistribution of wealth type of things, which is what DEI is, it's redistribution of wealth kind of masqueraded as like a hiring economic policy.
I don't think it's that, because it doesn't get into the actual economics of it. It's just literally saying we need to count a certain amount of black people and all that because we think that there's a racist hegemony.
Yeah, so, but based on hiring.
I think, but people that
So it's
DEI,
economics.
DI people don't think it's just about hiring. They apply that shit like all over the place beyond that. That's why I think it's different than like actual
Well,
what
yeah,
Karl Marx
even the
was saying.
people that push DEI don't know what it is. Like they overreach.
Exactly.
They overreach
But
with
I'm
all
telling
of
you
it.
that I
Yeah.
know what it is. I don't agree with it, and that it's very different than like what Karl Marx wrote about.
Not really.
Karl Marx wasn't talking about race. Karl Marx was talking about the relationship between an employer and his employee in terms of like the philosophy
Yeah,
of that dynamic.
redistribution of wealth.
Yeah, that's different
Yeah.
than DEI could
Yeah, but
apply.
you can but in those terms though, redistribution of wealth is so blanketed that you can kind of like put any group of people into that. So
That's
black people
kind of
they
my
use
point too. I agree
yeah,
with you.
but yeah, they use black people as pawns because black people are usually the most poor in this country, right? So they'll use them as like we need to redistribute wealth, and also because of slavery. So
I
it's
no,
easy to
I think that the reparations argument is that, but DEI is much more political and like
rep,
more identity
reparation
politics.
reparations is a redistribution of wealth argument. That's
That's
the
what
whole.
I'm.
That's the.
That's
It's
no,
exactly a
we're agreeing.
redistribution of wealth.
We're
Yeah.
agreeing. We're
Okay.
agreeing.
Sorry.
I'm saying DEI. I think isn't as specific. It's a identity politics thing. Redistribute reparations is literally an economic argument. I don't know. I'm not even making that. I'm just saying there's a difference between those two.
How is DEI not an economic argument?
Because it's not direct. I'm very concerned with if you want to make a Karl Marx argument, I'm very concerned with the relationship between an employer and his employee and the society that we live in and what basic living minimal standards are. DEI ends up being more political in that it will apply to universities, it'll apply to like a church, it'll apply to a group of people that isn't related to.
How would it apply to a church?
There's people that, I mean, we both know how crazy those people are. You don't think people are trying to apply that to a church?
Yeah, but how? Like in what way? Like hiring? A hiring
Not,
process?
that's my point. It's not about hiring. It could also be about admitting a student to a college. DEI is like a different. DEI's focal point. You can argue for DEI and be a corporatist capitalist. That's what the Democratic Party is. Like they're not socialists. They're just as like corporate.
Yeah, well, that's
capitalists, but
that's why
they're into DEI. That's my distinction. But when they see somebody make economic populist arguments or Karl Marx arguments, look at how quickly they freak out, like the way they're doing with Mamdani. Look at the Democratic Party responding to Mamdani because Mamdani is making economic arguments. The DEIs, they love that because it doesn't really. It's just all racial shit.
Well, no, Mamdani is like he's a legit communist. He admits he's a communist.
No, he said he's a social democrat, a socialist, a democratic socialist.
Well, that's you. Well, honestly, that's actually a way that they use to sort of get out of because Mamdani, for instance. I personally think Trump should fucking deport him, and I'll tell you why. Because he's running for office, right? Did you hear what he just recently said?
I don't think he recently said it. I think they're just pulling that out.
Okay, then they're pulling it out, but he said it.
There's a if you want to understand politics, what if he said that?
Do you think he changed his mind? Do you think he changed his mind?
No, but
that's irrelevant.
Yeah, but every legislator, including Donald Trump, all have to kind of assess what they're really going to do when they get into government. So you change, and that's good.
Yeah, but he hasn't changed his mind. He hasn't changed is the point. So, and you just admitted that. So my point is that he said that if he became, this is what I'm saying, because I don't even think we're clear on the same thing. He said that if he became the mayor, that he wouldn't let the federal government ICE enforce the immigration.
Oh, you're talking about the ICE thing. I thought you were talking about the.
Yeah. So he's admitting that he's.
No, you're making a good point.
Yeah. So as real quick. Because he's also he's not a he was an immigrant that came here, got a citizenship or whatever. But he's admitting that he's going to break the law if he becomes the mayor, right? Not to mention he's a communist, and here's the thing: he calls himself a democratic socialist or whatever, because that in the deportation law, that if you're an admitted communist, you can be deported if
Oh
you're an
God, is
immigrant.
that what you think is going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you kidding me? He's literally saying he wants to redistribute wealth. He wants to take over the means of production. How is that not communism? That's two main tenets of communism.
Okay, wait. There's like 5 things in there. First, let's talk
Two
about
things.
the. Not that I'm saying you're wrong. It's just like you covered like 4 kind of different philosophies that are interesting to talk about. Jesus, what's the first thing? He's not. Do you you really think that like he says he's a democratic socialist because he's a secret commie and he doesn't want to get deported? That's what you think?
Yeah, I think it's plausible.
Okay, there's the
Wait, you don't think he's a communist?
no like
How is he not?
let me respond to this.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think that if you look like, do you think that in the 70s like America was much better economically?
I don't know. I didn't live in the 70s.
Well, when was America great?
Probably 80s, 90s.
Based on what?
Um things were cheaper, lower inflation.
When was the biggest economic boom?
Families were like somebody was able to have like a one household income and, still be able to
And their
pay off
wife
their
and their wife
mortgage.
didn't have to get married?
Yeah, of course
And
they
their
had to
wife
get
didn't have to
married.
and their wife didn't have to work?
Yeah.
You know when the peak of that
Not
was?
full not full time, not full time. Let me put it that way.
But that was her choice. She didn't have to work because they needed both full-time workers, right?
Not well, my point is not like now where you do need a
Yes.
two income household in order to survive.
Do you know when the peak like economic boom in this country was for people at the highest standard of living?
Wasn't it like the 1950s or something like that?
It was like the 60s up
Yeah.
until 1979. Do you know
Yeah,
what the
right up until the civil rights
no, in
bill was signed.
1979 deregulation started. Do you know what the tax rate was during that? For
No.
96%.
I honestly I don't even know what that means.
Right now, for rich people, the tax percentage is about 23% and then 31. At our highest peak, the tax rate was 96%, and that was the biggest economic boom where people
No,
had
no,
the
no,
highest
no, no.
standard of living.
Sorry. What I'm saying is explain what that means. Like, what is because I don't understand. What is 96?
I'm arguing that in the after FDR's New Deal, there's a set of economic policies and a philosophy about raising the standard of living that now you would call communist, but at the time were just normal. So even Richard Nixon, if Richard Nixon,
No, I stated what I.
let me make this point.
Go
If
ahead.
somebody ran right now on just the same policies that Richard Nixon ran on, you would call him a radical communist. The
No,
country's Overton window has moved over 3 decades of deregulation and corporatism and your economic philosophy, which has made it so the wife has to work now. People can't afford shit. Inflation has gone up. The standard of living has gone down. And it's because of taxation as representation. It's a societal question. At that time, when we were peaking, the baby boomers who, like, when they talk about make America great again, they're talking about a time where that tax rate was 96%. So you have to understand that. So when you're talking about Mamdani, Mamdani is talking about isn't even like what Nick is to the right of what Nixon.
you're saying that Mamdani and Nixon are close in policy. What
I'm
I'm
saying
saying is that
Nixon is to the left of Mamdani.
no, you're insane. What I'm
Look
saying is this. I
look it
made it
up. Look
very.
it
I
up.
made it. No, I made it very clear. What even if tell me how I'm wrong is seizing the means of production and redistribution of wealth not two of the core main tenets of communism. Am I wrong?
The thing about do you want me to speak
Kind of a yes
specifically
or
about the
no.
grocery store thing, or do you want me to broadly answer what you just said?
No, it's kind of a yes or no question.
Ask it again.
Is like two main core tenets of communism: seizing the means of production,
Mhm.
the government owns the means of production,
Mhm.
and redistribution of wealth.
Yeah, I understand why I chose to be more specific.
Okay. So
the only argument you can make about him wanting to seize the means of production is government owned
he said it.
grocery stores.
No, he literally said he wants to seize he said those words exactly. We want to seize the means of production. Huh?
I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying, like, I'm not just calling Mamdani a communist, like trying to be like, a shock jock or something. I actually have like I was arguing with somebody who's an extreme right wing guy on the Hague show, where he's in favor of National Socialism, and I'm like, so you're in favor of communism, and I'm like explaining how it's closer to communism than what I believe. And he was calling me a commie. So my point is, though, I have a requirement for something to be called communism.
I'm reading this because this is important if we're going to talk about that. Okay, let's see.
Jacob Waters asked if he could come on. Jacob, follow me on X because I couldn't find you. I could have him come in. Spice things up a little bit.
That was from 2021, and he was just making an analogy about the Overton window that he wasn't calling for this. Dude, come on. Look, have you fact checked this? Have you actually tried?
Explain it.
Here, you want me to read the quote and then we'll analyze it?
Go ahead.
All right. But the relevant portion in the clip starts when you spoke about acting on an agenda based on convictions of belief, whether they're popular or not. Quote, but then there are other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS or whether it's the end of seizing the means of production, where do we not have the same level of support at this very moment? So
he said whether it means things that we mean. Like, so he's saying that that's what he wants to do.
No, his point is saying that we're not doing that. That was the point I was making earlier. That
say it again for me.
The quote or
what you just read.
Yeah. So speaking on the agenda based on conviction and belief, whether they're popular or not. But then there are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions of Israel, or whether it's the end goal of seizing the means of production, where we do not have the same level of support at this very moment.
Okay, so he's saying that that's something he firmly believes in. What are you talking about?
He said that in 2021.
Okay, so you're going with the it's an old quote again. Has he changed his mind?
No, this is what
I'm saying. Show me evidence that he's changed his mind and taken that back. Because I showed you evidence that he said it.
This is what I was saying earlier. I already addressed this. Is that when you're actually about to be in a position of potentially governing, you're not going to do a lot of things. And if you want to make the argument that he thinks that we should do that, that is different. But you said
that is the argument
on seizing the means of production.
The argument isn't whether or not he'll be successful. The argument is what does he want to do and what is his worldview. He's a communist. That's what I'm saying. You're disagreeing with me. You're just saying he's not going to be successful, so that means he's not a communist. That's not an argument.
Hold on. Let me finish.
That's ridiculous.
What? I'm not going to be stubborn. Give me 1 second.
I think you are being stubborn.
No, because I'm trying to read it and thoughtfully respond.
He said if it's not, he's saying, yeah, you're right in that he's talking about the Overton window, and he's saying that there's things that we don't believe in that they try to say we believe in, but then there's things that we firmly believe in, like seizing the means of production, that are also kind of looped into the whole thing. The Overton.
Yeah, here's where I'll meet you halfway on this. Yeah, I don't think that's what he wants to do as mayor. He said that before it was ever possible that he could be mayor, but I do think point taken on that. He said that before he ran. I don't think that I'm sure he's not actually running on that. He's literally running on like shit that's to the right of Richard Nixon.
Can I tell you what he's running on too?
But fair enough on him having said that.
He's also running on that he wants to seize land from luxury apartments and turn
That they're
them
not
into.
using and they're hoarding real estate because there's a real estate problem and he's trying to get rents down. I agree
Okay,
with that.
but the government doesn't own it. It's privately owned, right?
Absolutely, we disagree on this. I think that the government, when rents are do you not uh, do you not think rents are like unmanageably high for everyone, no matter if you're in New York or not?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay,
I agree.
so you've got BlackRock, which people like Trump talk about, that just all these foreign investors come and they buy up all of this real estate and they just sit on it because that's the way to avoid that's a form of money laundering. He's talking about that. He's like, you can't just hoard up property. And when we have a rent crisis, that's I agree with that.
Yeah, sure. I agree with it
I
too,
believe
but
the government.
I
I
don't
believe the
think.
government should get involved in that. I do.
Yeah, but I agree with that
If you're
too.
gonna
But
fucking if you're gonna own a bunch of property, you gotta. There's so much space in a city, and rent is so high that people cannot afford to exist anymore. I mean, the rent is
listen, my
insane.
my point is I agree with that. However, I don't believe the solution to that is Mossy Projects, son. We in the boroughs. Let's shoot up niggas. That's what I'm saying. Like the government fucking owned buildings are known to be horribly upkeep. What's the word I'm looking for? The upkeep on them are bad because there's no profit incentive to
He's not.
government
He's not arguing that
public
the government.
housing. He
He's
wants
not. His argument isn't that the government owns the building; it's that you can't own it if you're one of those people. So that doesn't
no.
mean
His argument is that I could play the video. His argument that he wants the government to buy up all the land or seize the land and then build projects.
oh, you're talking that is a separate thing that he argues for, and that is that they should have rent and controlled places, which I don't really. Uh, I don't know how to. I don't know if I agree with that, um, because it's in these limited areas. I honestly don't know how we resolve this rental crisis in a way that isn't gonna that's actually realistic. I don't know because it's that level of corruption, but I do think one good idea is the limiting people, private equity firms, and just investors from foreign countries owning real estate and driving up the cost of rent, and they don't even live there. But that's one fit. I agree with that policy. Bigger picture, I don't. But I don't know about the rent controlled government buildings. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer on that.
And I'll be honest, I don't either. I don't
Okay,
either. Maybe that's where we leave that conversation because I did want to get to the
that
other
makes
thing.
me respect you even more. Is that we can both just be like, I don't fucking know how to fix that one.
How you fucking do it? I saw something about Medicaid and Medicare and all that, and they're like, oh well, Israel has free Medicare, and I'm like, well, what are they doing? And they basically have
They're
like,
giving their people free Medicare because we're paying for all their other shit.
well, not even what it is they came up with a system that took like 15 years to actually work. But it was like they have like more or less 4 different policies you can choose from. It's like a broad
It's
thing.
universal health care, and they can afford it because they don't have to pay for their defense.
I guess you could say that.
And
Maybe,
I think
maybe.
that I think we
It's
can't.
like
I think
Canada.
theirs is better than Canada. Canada's a little bit more
Yeah,
conservative
Canada's
than
fucked.
this. But yeah, I mean, I think that's what's hard about healthcare here is that we're the leader of the free world, so we have to spend all this money on defense. Otherwise, we can't have bases everywhere. So then we can't afford to have universal healthcare. And I just fundamentally disagree with that.
I don't know. Like I said, that's something I don't have an answer to. I don't know how it all
Fair enough.
works.
I respect that. I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. I did want to talk about this because we started talking about it on Jake's show, and then he cut it off because he's getting that Jew money. Uh, um, I'm curious because I asked you the question because you're in support of Palestine, right?
Mhm.
How do you resolve that ideologically with you being transgender and you standing with Palestine, who would fucking lop your head off if you walked into the Gaza Strip? Or maybe I'm just ignorant. I don't know because you're from where again? Pakistan?
I'm from Pakistan. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's two things to that. One is it's funny that the people that always try to make that point are the very people where if this country was in the same impoverished conditions as these countries, y'all would be the ones that would be doing the same shit to trans people. So that's one thing. Because to me,
No, because
yeah,
our religion doesn't dictate us
oh
to
yeah,
kill
you'd
anybody.
really step up for trans people if they started putting us in the gulag. Give me a
Yeah,
break.
yeah. As a
We can
Christian, I
what?
would be. I'm obligated to. That's the difference between Christianity and
Do you
Islam.
have
Is
premarital sex?
yeah, I'm a sinner.
Well,
I'm a
then
joker.
so
I'm a
as a sinner,
poker. Go ahead. Sorry.
um,
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I don't because I'm
let
a
me answer.
sinner. Let me just answer this real quick. Because I'm a sinner and in my religion I have to admit that I'm a sinner and we're all sinners.
Yeah,
I
you
can't
pick it. That's my point.
kill
You
you.
pick
I
you,
can't kill you for being a sinner
but you
because
pick.
I'm a sinner myself.
But this is why, like, when you get in these like ethno state, which is what you're arguing, things is all of you, everyone, like Muslims, Christians, they all make these exceptions for these little things that apply to them. And that's why we can't use religion like that, because everyone interprets religion differently. For you, it's like, oh, I can still fuck girls before I get married because that's what you want to do. But then you're going to be like, I'm a Christian and therefore we should oppress trans people. No one's consistent about it. So let's drop. I feel like we should just ditch that and start
No,
thinking about.
I'm not in favor of oppressing trans people. That goes back into our argument about trans erasure. You get what I'm saying?
Okay, then
I think
you're my beacon of light amongst people that are just like you that definitely wouldn't stop people from hanging trans people. If you were, again, if you lived in the economic conditions that the United States imposes on all these Muslim nations, the United States will not let a Muslim nation elect their own president. Anytime they try to liberalize or represent their own economics or try to use their oil money to have a society, we go in there and do a coup and fuck their countries up. And my argument is that whenever countries live in those types of economic conditions, whatever religion it is, fundamentalism creeps up. You're starting to see it a little bit here where people are poor, and when they're poor, then they start like looking around and being like, fuck you, and they use their religion to do that. Unfortunately, there are not that many wealthy Muslim areas except Saudi Arabia through the workings of America. Now, to your question, I'm born in Pakistan. In Pakistan, there's a word called hijras. Transgender people are normal there because there's parts of the country that just have these high surplus of trans people. Pakistan, there's universities that you can go to. You can get a scholarship and go to culinary school just on the basis of being transgender. Pakistan is more liberal than the United States about transgender rights. Pakistan is a Muslim country.
Okay, what about Palestine? Because I don't know much about Pakistan.
If you're asking me to make a choice about the way that they would treat me, if that meant that this many people wouldn't be slaughtered, I will take the rights loss on my end. My position on Israel and Palestine is that I want people to stop getting murdered. So if that takes me losing trans rights, I'm fine with it.
I mean, that's a strong stance to take. I'll give you credit on that. But my question is, again, how do you resolve that ideologically? Like, because you have to really.
Here's how I resolve it ideologically. It's the same way I resolve my economic policies. I'm for whatever minimizes the most amount of human suffering anywhere. If just recognizing that they're religious Muslim fundamentalists and that I couldn't live in Palestine, and that they would kill me if I came there in a second, meant that they would stop having children, 400 children getting shot by snipers every day and killed and burned alive. I'm happy to. I'll trade in even more rights than that. I'll give my house away. I'll live on the streets for that because it is
And
horrible.
do you think that would actually stop Islam from being a violent religion?
I believe that what I said a second ago. I believe that if a Muslim country is allowed to utilize their own natural resources, which is not the case, and like have leaders that are like where Pakistan right now. I don't know if you follow it. Imran Khan is this famous cricket player. He was like a playboy that used to like bang Princess Diana and stuff, and he's this wealthy person. He won an election and he tried to represent the people, and pull America's influence there, because America uh, has military bases and they control their military in Pakistan because we're right next to China and India and Russia. The second that during COVID, Imran Khan, president of Pakistan, went and met with Vladimir Putin to make a deal about like a port, they fucking put him. They sent in all of these people to disrupt that nation, and he's hiding in a jail cell. And that's what happened to Benazir Bhutto, and that's what happened to her father. And
what was that? When
Benazir Bhutto is the female prime minister. I think that a lot of people think she got killed because she was like, yeah, Bin Laden's dead.
Okay, I know who you're talking about.
And her father was killed in the exact same way. This is what happened in Iran in 1953 with the coup. Anytime anyone tries to represent their people and pull them out of poverty, the United States installs a dictator. And my view is that when a country is allowed to live and thrive on their own without having United States military bases ever. Imagine if Mexico had military bases all over the United States, and anytime like we had an election, like if someone like Donald Trump that was going against the grain, they would just destabilize our country. Don't you think that maybe that would make people kind of more violent and more extreme? Like my mother is a Muslim.
Yeah, but let me just answer that question, because I find it again, because I find it hard to believe that Islam in its nature can coexist with the rest of the world and be, and we can all be free to do our thing. That's not in their religious doctrine.
So I grew up a Muslim. Let me tell you about my experience and what. Okay. So I grew up a Muslim. My mother's a Muslim. My father's a Muslim. My dad is like semi liberalized. Like he's just actually kind of a free thinker, but he's a cultural Muslim. My mom is a cultural Muslim. They both were raised in Pakistan. I'm familiar with the tenets of the Quran. When you talk to someone like my mom is like would consider herself to be religious. Like what she talks about is just the same as the 10 Commandments. Like for her faith is just this like spiritual grounding of just feeling like there's a heaven and a hell, and that doing the right thing and helping people is a positive thing. That's literally what my mom gets out of Islam.
Yeah, but can I explain something? This is the thing about Islam, right? For example, like let's take Sharia law. The reason why Sharia law cannot coexist in America is because it's in its nature sort of un-American, right?
Sharia law is not in the doctrine of Islam. Like, do you understand the difference between like Shiites and Sunnis?
Sort of. I'm learning.
I don't blame you for not knowing it. It's just this stupid thing, and it's just literally about like Prophet Muhammad's descendants or whatever. And so it's the same thing that happened with the Bible is like, or like there's like an Old Testament, then a New Testament, but then there's Paul, and then these people start interpreting the religions and doing all these little things because they have like different like political ideologies, or they want to conquer other nations, and et cetera, et cetera. Sharia law is not in the Quran. It's an extension of the Hadith, which is written after Prophet Muhammad died. It's not like someone like my mom has no like concept of ever wanting Sharia law or wanting Sharia law. I would argue that in the same way there's cultural Christians, it's what you want to do with any of these Sharia law. Let me say one more thing. I feel like we both could take so many passages out of the Bible or the Quran or the Old Testament and just fucking go buck wild with it. And that we just have to be honest that that's how it is. Most people like their faith is just because we don't know they don't like we have to question our mortality and why we're here. And it's just a comforting thing to just have that. And all of those holy books have the same basic principles and tenets of it. Like in Islam, like it recognizes that Jesus is going to come back. It recognizes Jesus, it recognizes the holy book. And but that's because they couldn't deny that it was real. You get what I'm saying? Like, yeah, but like, what about Mormonism? The point is just that all these religions are bullshit.
No. You're I think you're blanketing like, you're blanketing all religions like as if they're the same.
I am.
They're really not. So let's.
I'm blanking.
Hold on.
I'm saying Islam is bullshit, and so is Christianity.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Now, Sharia law, right?
Like, you understand what I was trying to say? My point was just that
No,
people, what they get out of their faith is like, it's not like these like, if I just like looked at like a Jim Bob fuckface like right wing crazy person that has like a religious network and he's like a corrupt fucker, and I attributed that to Christianity, that would be fucking unfair. It's the same thing. People just like religion makes them feel nice and it's like spiritual.
It's almost not debated that this country was founded on Christian values. Like it's obvious in our law. Like I don't.
I'll do that
So,
with you another day, but no, I don't want to even get into that.
well, my point is though is there's a reason why, for instance, you're not living in a Muslim country anymore. You couldn't be who you are and transition and become like you're now on time. You know what I mean?
I think the reason people immigrated to America again is because they're the superpower, and like no other countries are like where I'm from. Again, Benazir Bhutto and her father got massacred, and then the military took over, and everybody got poor again. So America's where you came. I would live there. I would live there in a heartbeat because again, there's transgender rights in Pakistan. You can get scholarships for being transgender in Pakistan. We had legislation to define transgender as a gender before America.
Well, that's from all that American intervention.
The reason I'm not in Pakistan, quite frankly, is because the United States won't fucking let us be a country, and it's a shitty country because we have to accept the conditions of a military-controlled government with the Mossad and the American CIA who run Pakistan.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Sharia law, is it not based on Islam and Islam's values?
It's not based on, like, do you know what the 5 pillars of Islam are?
I can't name them off the top of my head.
Pull it up right now and read them to me. The 5 pillars are like literally the foundational principles. Don't Jesus Christ, this is like essential. This is like
but no, you're trying to like sort of deflect from the fact that they are.
I already addressed that, and you just didn't process what I said. I said that in the Quran there is no Sharia law. It's an extension of Shiite Islam in the Hadith.
Okay, let me make my point then. In Islam, fuck Sharia law then. In Islam itself,
Sharia law.
Sharia law. In Islam itself, the sort of for something like something illegal or immoral in Islam, right? It's more or less like based on the identity of the victim and the identity of the perpetrator. So, for example, certain things in Islam are illegal for men to do or for women to do, but not men, right?
Are you aware of the Bible? Because if you want to go down that road, it's going to be real bad. Because
because what we're talking about is extremism. Because then we could get into then we'll have to get into morality and how you dictate your morality, which you refuse to get into.
What does the Bible do to a woman that commits adultery?
It doesn't say to chop her head off.
It's just to stone her to death.
Yeah, that's the Old Testament though.
Oh, pull up the.
Yeah, what did Jesus say? He literally.
Go back to what Jesus said.
Hold on. There's literally a story that's very famous of Jesus telling people not to stone a woman to death for committing adultery. Am I right or wrong?
Yes, but it's interesting.
Yes, do
you recognize that?
Testament, yes.
Do you recognize that there's things that Jesus said, and then there's the ways that those were perverted by the people after him that used his name in the Bible to, rewrite Christianity?
Yeah.
Okay. Why not do you think that maybe Prophet Muhammad said a bunch of things, but then afterwards people started adding a bunch of shit to it too?
Yeah, but you didn't have to add anything. Hold on. You didn't have to add anything to Prophet Muhammad's beliefs to make it fucking extreme and radical. It was already in its nature that.
What did Prophet Muhammad say about cutting anyone's heads off?
What did
Prophet Muhammad say about cutting?
No. My point is this overall is that the punishment for instance, somebody who's not Muslim for doing something to a Muslim is going to be way more extreme than a Muslim doing something to somebody who's not Muslim. Am I right? Do you follow?
Did Prophet Muhammad say that?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's in their tenets at least.
Okay, but I thought like we're going to go on what Jesus said. Because I told you what the Bible says.
No, you told me what the Old
Jesus
Testament.
didn't
You
say
told me
that.
what the Old Testament says. We go off of the New Testament. That's what Islam needs is a New Testament, and they'll be fine. They're literally Old Testament primitive thinking.
I think that they need to just
We've
not.
outgrown.
They
We
just need to
evolved
not be
past that.
Muslims.
Yeah, but you admit that you're using Old Testament, which we don't go off of anymore.
I was being like nice by just going with that one.
No, I think that was your only example.
No, because then you made that.
Really, anytime anybody who's going at the Bible, you're always going to bring up Old Testament to show cruelty,
In John,
which is
okay,
easy.
in the New
That's the
Testament.
point of that's
So
the
you
point
you
of
were
the new
wrong. You were
covenant.
wrong. I was right. New Testament, John 8:1-11. Threatened execution. A woman is brought before Jesus by religious leaders, says she was caught in adultery and should be stoned.
Okay, that's what Jesus said.
It's in the New Testament.
That's what Jesus said. That she should be stoned. Or do you want to continue reading? Let's get. How about you read the red letters? Make it easy for you.
Of a young woman's body and sexuality to incite violence. Horace's daughter, and this is in Matthew 14:3-11, dances for King Herod. He promises her anything, and her mother instructs her to ask for John the Baptist's head. The girl is used as a tool in a violent political vendetta. Her body is commodified, and the violent outcome is manipulated through her.
You're reading an
The
interpretation.
bleeding woman, Luke 8:43-48.
You're now reading an interpretation, and you're not reading the actual scripture.
You want to read the actual scripture?
Yeah, go ahead. What did Jesus say about stoning women to death?
You need to define your terms when we're having a conversation about the two religions, about whether we're talking about what Muhammad and Jesus said, or about what the interpretations of the following books, especially when you're talking about Shia and Sharia law. Are we grouping all of those into one, or are we making distinctions?
No, because we as Christians, we had not acknowledged that the Old Testament was barbaric, and that's why we believe in Jesus, the new covenant, to come in and forgive us of all our sins, so we don't have to like sacrifice our kids to God. And you get what I'm saying? Like Jesus came here to die for our sins. So I'm just explaining what we believe. You know what I mean? I'm not saying.
I say this is it's cool. Like so.
Yeah. So what I'm saying though is that's
recognize the Old Testament, right? Like in the New Testament, you don't. It's just an addendum to the Old Testament. That's what the New Testament is. Do you think that? So why is it that like an infallible God needed to be like, oh shit, I actually needed to do the New Testament to kind of fix a couple of things?
Because he gave us free will. And then that is a question though, that you brought up a really interesting question. Does God admit, like when he flooded the earth, right? Is that God admitting that he made a mistake?
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean?
don't even want to wait, real quick. It's a philosophical question that Christians actually talk about a lot.
Absolutely. And I don't even want to like I've watched so many of these like debates like growing up, but like I don't want to have that because I respect your faith and I don't want and I just don't want to criticize it.
No, you can though. That's the thing.
I don't want to.
But that's again though, that's the difference between Islam and Christianity. I'm fine with you criticizing my faith and questioning it. Islam, you can't do that, or you'll get hands put on you.
There's people that are Christians, if I criticize their faith, would be fine if somebody like cut my head off. Isn't that true?
I wouldn't call them a real Christian.
Oh yeah, but you see how you can't. Then
there's people who are fake Christians and fake Muslims.
Exactly. So like, if you criticize Christianity, I've had these debates with my dad so much. If you criticize Christianity, he would be like so excited to like riff with you like this. He's a Muslim, so what does that mean?
I'd love to talk to you.
Exactly. These are all subjective things, so there's no point.
Yeah, but that's why I think it's interesting to kind of like talk about it. Like I think we kind of get away from these conversations. And I know you're not religious, so maybe it's not fair to have this conversation with you.
It's not that I'm not religious. It's that I'm at a point in my life where I don't want to criticize people that are religious because I think that is unfair and that none of us know. And if that's what somebody, if that makes them feel good and feel peace inside, I don't want to sit here and parse Bible verses with them or the Quran thing.
You do though. You say that like you blanket Christianity into all the other religions that create problems in the world. But again, like
I don't. I don't. I don't.
point at another country that's more free and America.
Denmark.
In what way?
A lot. I was just there. We're not freer than the other countries.
Well, yeah, we have a lot of corruption though.
We are enslaved to the corporations in this country. And if you don't realize,
can you own guns in Denmark? Maybe you could. I don't know.
I don't think they want to own guns. You can get guns in.
Yeah, they're controlled by their government then. Inevitably,
our country with guns is this own experiment. I don't think that we should outlaw them, but that's not a test of freedom.
I think it is.
I think having your
I think it's the ultimate test of freedom. You can defend your life.
Philosophically I know, but you're a paranoid right-wing weirdo. I think that freedom is having the freedom to have your basic needs met and live a fulfilled life that's creative.
Would you say America is a violent country?
Absolutely.
Okay, so why am I paranoid for wanting a gun?
I want a gun.
Okay, so why am I paranoid for wanting a gun? You just call me paranoid.
I don't think you're paranoid for wanting a gun. I think that you're paranoid because of like your ideology. It's very focused on this insane, like,
yeah, that's an assumption.
They're coming to ruin us, and the Sharia laws.
You know what they say about assumptions.
The transgenders are all gonna like convert our kids. Like, you have a hyper.
No, but you believe that I have a gun because I want to kill transgender people. That's ridiculous.
No. That wasn't my point at all. I said that.
Why'd you bring that up?
Worldview is based on all these like outside groups coming and trying to indoctrinate and Sharia law. You're a paranoid guy politically.
No, not really. It's reality. Like, are you saying tyranny is not a real threat in this country?
I'm saying that your gun isn't going to save you from tyranny if it happens.
It'll save me more than not having a gun, right?
I'm not even attacking guns' rights. I said I want a gun too.
Yeah, but you kind of are, like, you're calling me paranoid for saying
I wasn't calling you paranoid
having a gun doesn't.
I wasn't calling you paranoid. Like, I just explained it. Like, every facet of what politics and society are, I guarantee you that you have some statement that is like fucking paranoid and insane. But I love you though.
No, I'm saying, like, I used to think that too, but then just the more I see things play out, I'm like, I wasn't really that paranoid. Like, I was right to buy guns and ammunition.
As somebody that loves you, I think that you are so online and you just mainline this right-wing shit every day, and I think that you would benefit from just kind of stepping back from that.
I'm telling you, I'm the least online guy ever. I'm not online at all. I like have a life. Like, I don't put really that much work into my channel. Like, I love my career. I love what I do for a living. That's more important to me than YouTube and being online.
Then what every time you spend online, you're mainlining insane propaganda.
No, I'm just saying, like, for instance, like, what I do for a living, I catch criminals for a fucking living.
You're a cop?
I mean? No, I'm not a cop.
Well, you're a community.
Yeah, I'm a hall monitor.
Are you really?
No, I'm in security, but I
yeah, that doesn't surprise me either. That kind of, let's be honest, that kind of fits into everything else. I love you though. I love you though.
That's the point though. Like, I that's why I hate people online, even on my side, because they talk from a place of like non-experience. I'm literally in the trenches with the fucking scumbags, and I'm catching people who have warrants, and I'm literally like, I'm responsible for a lot of people getting deported. You get what I'm saying? And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that because they were fucking scumbags and they were stealing and they were committing crimes. So so that's why partially I do have my view is that I'm actually in the trenches. You get what I'm saying? That's why I
argue that because of that paranoid template, people like that end up gravitating towards the job that you have.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. In my world, carrying a gun is not paranoia. It's reality. The reason, like, for instance, me and like I'm not putting myself in the same bracket as law enforcement, but we play like the same kind of tactics.
Yeah, you want to be a cop.
No, not even. I would probably like to be, but I couldn't deal with the regulations. I like
working for who you are. I'm not judging. I'm just busting your ball.
Yeah. But I like working for private.
You what I was saying about the gun thing. You asked if we live in a violent country, and then I said yes, and then you said, "So do you understand why I want a gun?" And I said, yes, I would want one too. We live in a violent country, and it's totally, and because we're never going to get rid of guns, it's absolutely rational to want to have a gun.
A lot of people get stabbed too and
But I
beat
know,
to
but
death.
but the point was you were equating freedom with just guns, and I was arguing. I believe that freedom is like having our basic needs met and being able to live a fulfilled life without having to worry about things like food and healthcare. We have a fundamental disagreement about that probably, but to me, that's freedom.
I'm just saying, like, if there's an apocalypse, Walking Dead style,
Dude,
I think I have it in me to rob a family of 5 of all their food. You know what I mean? And I could do that with a gun, and that just ensures my personal like I'm not being harmed. But that's why I don't think harm is the necessarily like the exact like principle we should base everything off of, because just because
well, we're not even
like
agreeing on like yes, I agree with you, but like yeah, like I don't think that there might. I don't actually think there's a disagreement here because the only reason I don't have a gun is because I haven't figured out how to get one yet.
probably because you live in a liberal city and there's no
Dude,
freedoms there.
I live in Oregon. Like Oregon
Portland,
is
yeah.
Oregon is a gun. Oregon is like I'm from South Carolina. Like people that like don't like me because I'm brown in South Carolina will just be like, "Oh, you're a fucking foreigner." Here in Oregon, you'll get shot. They'll just shoot you. Like Oregon is gun country, so don't forget that.
That's
Portland is a
amazing.
very small part of it.
So why is it hard for you to get a gun then?
Oh, it's not hard. It was only like I think in the last like I've always wanted like one of those like vintage revolvers, but it was only like in the last like I live alone and like there's people that like have started to start stalking me that end up at my house. And so I've had that moment where I live alone, so it's like probably should definitely get a gun like sooner than later.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I never said we shouldn't have guns here.
Yeah, yeah. You get a gun.
Yeah, I want a gun.
It'll change your life. You'll feel much more protected.
I just want ones like sexy vintage like revolvers. And yeah. Cause I had a scare where like this guy was like um because as much as you think that like trans women are trying to like uh like trick people, like most trans women, like I'm only into like just women, but most trans women are only into trans women, but like Trump supporting men that go online and say they hate trans people constantly try to have sex with me, and when they get rejected they start showing up in front of my house and like stalking me. And that's the reality of it. Like the people
Now,
yeah, go ahead. So
now
that's what
I
I
could
realized
see
I need to get a gun, like
I
because
want to I want to disagree with you just based on tribalism, but then there is like the whole incel movement where I think most of them are just homos that don't want to admit it. You know what I mean?
dude, the men that like go out of their way to have sex with me are Trump supporters, and a lot of them like are like psycho Trump supporters, and then some of them are even like Nazis, Proud Boy. Like there's Proud Boy. There's a couple of them that I know were in that Patriot prayer group, and they know where I live, and they show up because they're like mad because like I turned them down, and that's what makes me actually want to have a gun.
Partially, I also want to disagree with you because the only other way would be like, hey, show me proof, but I don't think I want to see that.
Well, next time, like one of those things happens, I'll get a picture and I'll give you
I
proof.
don't know if I want to.
Dude, yeah, the most
go
like
down that
the
road.
men that are like the most like just fiending for trans women are always like Trump supporters. And and there's a lot of people that I've met like that. There's also, but there's a lot of them that didn't end up going psycho stalking me that I end up hanging out with, like at a bar. But even though I'm not attracted to them, but I'll just like riff with them, and they're like Trump supporters.
I gotta ask you. I gotta ask you something.
Uh-huh.
You're not into dudes. You're into women.
Mm-hmm.
But so what's like? I don't know how to ask this. What's the like? Aren't you just more of a cross dresser?
I think like no, because I'm like hormonally completely different. Like you have to like really the difference between being hormonally like I've like went like I have to get regular blood tests to be on HRT. And like I've like zero testosterone. There's that it changes so many things about you. Whereas a cross dresser is just somebody that probably like smokes meth and like wants to like watch, you know what I mean? I have to pee really quick. I'll be right back there. Do you want? Are we good?
Yeah, no, go ahead, go ahead. Yeah.
All right.
I'll read the chat or something. Terry Strange in the building. Let's see. Most trans women are trying to mess with the lesbian community. Nice little intersectional train wreck. Yeah, maybe I'll ask Ava that next. Next on the Misfit Nation. This is the Wild Wild West. Let's see. I guess Terry Strange is not an Ava fan. He's got little movies. Yeah, I did notice that while I was asking the question. Threw me off. All right. Jacob Waters didn't get back to me. Maybe he did. Let me check my Yeah, he told me it was Jacob Waters on X, and it was like fucking 20 different Jacob Waters. By the way, just registered with me. Movies is a hilarious word. He's got little movies. It's kind of disgusting too. Bobby Nick was here. So
What's that?
Ava, there Terry Strange said tell me what you think about this. Most trans women are trying to mess with the lesbian community. Nice little intersectional train wreck.
How are they trying to mess with them?
Like you're just trying to I guess she's trying to say that you're just using the trans thing to get in with the lesbians. Like you just want to lick some lesbian muff.
No, like in my like again, like I'm also like I'm not like out like on apps or any of that shit. Like I've always like a lot of the girls that I have sex with are girls that I had sex with before I transitioned, which is interesting. But I have sensed the lesbian world is just it exists like in a like there's no
and its own little angry space.
Yeah, yeah, which is weird because like some people would describe I don't know all the labels and stuff, but like some people would say, "Oh, you're a transgender woman, lesbian," because I guess technically it's that. It's just I just don't have a strap on.
I see. So they're not into that.
I don't know. I just know that the only way I ever really met people that I hooked up with was because when I would play shows, because I've always been in bands and things like that. So that's how I meet people anyway. And so yeah, so people are if they're attracted to me, I don't ever hit on anyone. So if they're like communicate they're attracted, then that's how I end up getting laid.
I have a theory. Tell me what you think about this. Mm-hmm. I've never in my life met a happy lesbian.
I haven't either. Lesbians are kind of nasty.
Yeah, they're rude. They're angry. Mm-hmm. I think they just need a nice stiff one in them. You know what I mean?
That's right. But they want to wear strap on. But maybe that's why they don't like transgender people, because like they hate penises.
I don't know if it's they hate penises. They hate men. Yeah. So it's like you're too real.
So you should love them because like they group me just with you.
No, I think yeah. So I think there's a thing to that it's like women can't make each other happy. They need men to make them happy.
Yeah. And that's why they're so weird. And,
yes.
I mean, I'm sure I'm weird too, obviously, but like but yeah, lesbian people and gay people are in their own like that's what's just so weird about like being grouped with them, because like I was made fun of like gay people and lesbians, and there's nothing like there's no overlap like as about whatever it is like that makes us what we are. Like gay guys, like I can't comprehend the way that like this more prototypical stereotypical gay couple or like a gay guy, and then with lesbians, like I have no. Like I'm more comfortable, honestly, around like
there's no connection there.
You like talking to you than like gay people or lesbians.
No offense, but ugh.
No, not in a sexual way. I mean, just like
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I know. I'm just being an asshole.
No, you're good. You got to make sure your audience doesn't turn on you for having this fucking freak.
I got some palms to grease.
If you want to argue, and do you want me to just be very performatively trans, just so your audience isn't turning you?
Go. Actually, yeah. Go ahead.
Fuck you, you're just a misogynist, faggot. Oh wait, I can't say that. You're a misogynist
I'll
bitch.
go ahead. You can say that on my show.
Yeah,
I'll
I'm a
withhold it back
woman.
to myself.
I'm a woman.
So you get laughed at on this show for that.
I'm laughing too.
Yeah, see, that's why I didn't really want to get bogged down in the trans thing, because I'm like the core problems I have with it, you're not in favor of. So, and I believe you're not. So,
Yeah, that was what was funny about our first conversation. Is like within like 10 minutes, like, oh well, okay, I got it.
All right, let's move on to fucking politics or
Let's
something.
fight about some other shit.
What do you think about Israel?
Yeah,
That'll start an argument
Mhm.
somewhere.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Cool.
we could probably wrap it there. We're at hour 30.
Awesome. That was
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
Good time.
Definitely. We should do this again.
Yeah.
Ava, tell people. I don't think you have anywhere for people to find you, right? Other than your home.
I have my
and the
my
stalkers.
music is at avaraiza.bandcamp.com. I did post a new song I recorded last week. I made a YouTube channel, and that's at Avaraiza. Oh, thank you for that, by the way. Yeah,
Something unholy. Go ahead. Sorry.
thanks for having me on again, and I apologize to your show and your co-host and your audience for my behavior last time when I was just being an asshole in the super chat. But that was fun. So yeah, I'm
Oh
down to do.
yeah. Well, understand too. We're assholes, but we understand that because we are, we have to take it ourselves. So Skrill was like, we just brushed that shit off. We're not like,
It was funny
oh my
during it.
god, you fat shamed my co-host. Ugh.
I don't like Nick and all them were like, you're being mean or whatever, and I was just like, well, I'm just calling him fat. It's fun.
Yeah, we dish it out, but we could take it too. So
Exactly. It's
that's
like
what
I
I'm
don't
doing.
ever want anyone to be canceled, and I'm a free speech absolutist. So like that means I
Nice.
get to call people fat fucks too, and it's fun.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, thank you, Ava, for coming on.
So good to talk to
Glad
you.
we
I'm sure
did
I'll see
this.
you on Hudson, and then yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
I'm gonna
Thank
summon
you for
you after.
accepting my apology, Terry. And yeah, I hope you have a good night. All right.
All right, Ava.
All right, I'll see you later.
And I will. Oh, okay. I guess I just end. That was a nice conversation. All right, guys. Thank you for all. Excuse me. Thank you all for watching. Terry Strange jumped in. Lisa Marie, Jacob Waters. If you're watching, I don't know if you're watching the playback or you jumped in again, but I'll have you on. You gotta reach out on X because I can't find you. Maybe I'll find you through Jake or whatever. But I definitely want to have you on to talk about the Israel thing because I like to figure out if I'm right or wrong, and the best way to do that is to kind of clash your ideas with somebody who disagrees with you. So Jacob Waters, and I think we agree on some things too. So definitely reach out. I'll try to find you myself. And Pete Ortiz. Shout outs to Pete Ortiz for jumping in. And then who else? Bobby Nick. Shout outs to Bobby Nick. Him and Jake squashed the beef. It's over. So let me just explain to you guys. I went after Bobby Nick a couple times, not too hard because I was always into the idea of Bobby Nick and Jake talking it out. But I was more like the Tony Yayo of that situation. Jake was just he was in the beef and I had to ride with my friend. So not fakeness. Bobby Nick is now a friend of Jake Hudson. So now he's by proxy a friend of the Misfit Nation. So shout outs to Bobby Nick. And he said he's going to share it out. Thank you, sir. All right. Well, I'm out of here. Thank you all for watching. I think I have my things. No, they're not here. What the F? Oh, this isn't my main channel. That's why. All right. Well, follow me on X at Crishaun the Don. You could follow the show on Rumble. This was just an impromptu thing. That's why it's on YouTube. Maybe I'll pull it down from YouTube and put it on Rumble because we said a few foul words. Actually, Avo was the first one to drop a faggot on the show. Wasn't expecting that. Kind of raised the stakes for me. But yeah. I was holding back. I guess I'll have to admit that one. You know. All right. Well, let's. Oh wait, what was I saying? Rumble at the Misfit Nation on Rumble, or follow and not or follow our user page at the Misfit or rumble.com/user/the Misfit Nation, and Podbean, misfitnation.podbean.com. All right, guys, I'm fucking out of here. There's no effects or anything special, so it's just gonna end. Fuck off.